Between a textual, a visual, and a multimodal analysis, multimodal is definitely the easiest one to do because there are just so many different moving parts that are available to you. And intuitively, sure, it might seem like the more moving parts, the more difficult it's going to be. And that maybe isn't necessarily untrue because there is so much more that you can look at. You could probably get bogged down depending on what you're looking at, but it also gives you way more depth to explore specific elements of the rhetoric of any communication. So if you wanted to focus on one element specifically, say you just want to focus on how pathos is evoked throughout a communication, then you have the verbal, the visual, and the auditory modalities in which to accomplish that. Versus if you're just looking at a text, you really just focus on what the words are, the textual rhetorical devices, where they're bringing in facts and logos, and how that's implementing your ability to understand the effectiveness of that particular message. Multimodal, it's a lot easier to focus in on something very specific to that communication. And I mean, just for case in point, the first thing that you could do is you could consider the difference between a written speech where you're just looking at the transcript versus analyzing a video recording of the same speech. The auditory and visual elements, they stack on top of the verbal element to recontextualize, enhance, or even clarify what might be ambiguous with only text. And that's really how most multimodal analyses are done. It tends to be a video, but that's not to say that that's the only form of communication you can analyze as a multimodal document. There's so many things you could do. A podcast is going to be verbal and auditory. You have music videos, which obviously it's a video, but just the music itself. You have the instrumental, and then you have the vocal stacked on top of that. So you have the auditory element of the instrumental, the auditory element of the vocals, and then you have the verbal element of the actual words, how they're said, any kind of figurative language that's used. So you have those different layers too, which makes that multimodal. So there's a lot of different things that you could analyze, so many different communications that could be looked at in this way. And you can really just start with the multimodal analysis, trying to do it with something that you're more comfortable with, that you're familiar with, and seeing how you can break that down and see exactly what techniques are being used to amplify that message. So although there are a number of different communications that would count as being multimodal, for this demonstration, I'm just going to be focusing on video, and to do that, I'm going to be focusing more specifically on the audio and what audio adds to having the words and the visuals, because that's going to be the main component typically for a multimodal analysis. The main questions that you want to answer with a video multimodal analysis is: what is the nature of the sound? What effect does the sound have? And how does that sound combine with the other modalities to create a new or enhanced effect? In order to demonstrate the effect that music can have on a communication, we're going to watch two versions of the trailer of The Batman, which came out in 2022. One version is not going to have anything, no music. All it has is some sound effects and dialogue. That's it. And then we're going to listen to a version that has the music in it as well, and then compare those to see what the difference is and how that changes the communication. All right, so here's the first version. We're going to give this a listen.
Haven't a clue. Let's play a game, just me and you. Any of this mean anything to you?
You're becoming quite a celebrity. Why is he writing to you?
If you are justice, please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye?
All right, so that's it. I'm going to stop it there. And I feel like it's pretty apparent. If you've already seen the original trailer, then you should definitely see the difference there. But it's pretty apparent that without that music, there's almost the loss of a sense of direction. It's a lot harder to understand what the movie wants you to feel. Things are happening on screen, and maybe some of the noises are a little bit eerie. Maybe the dialogue is presented in a way that does feel a little bit eerie as well. But without music, you are almost at a loss in terms of what this trailer wants you to feel, what emotion you're supposed to have going into the movie. And as a means of advertising the movie, getting you to spend your money to go watch it, letting you know exactly what kind of movie you're in for, what experience you're expected to have, is a pretty major part of creating any kind of trailer, which is why so many trailers do use music and use sound effects in ways that manipulate your emotions, pathos, in order to let you know what kind of film it is and convince you to see it if that's what you're interested in. All right, so now we're gonna watch the original version of the trailer, and you should be able to pick up on the difference that the music is making. A lot more than you would have been able to pick up on if you had never heard that version without the music. We obviously all know that music does make a trailer better, but it's hard to recognize just how much until we hear it without it.
Animals I've trapped
Haven't a clue.
all become my pet.
Let's play a game, just me and you.
Any of this mean anything to you?
You're becoming quite a celebrity. Why is he writing to you?
If you are justice, please do not lie. What is the price for your blind eye?
So there we see something completely different. Where we had silence before, the background music is filling that in, so it doesn't feel as vacuous, as empty. And that music also helps to set the pace for the trailer, where on certain drum beats, that's where you have cuts to different scenes. So it creates that pace. It helps to get you more emotionally invested. Certainly watching that, there's a certain feeling that you get, a certain emotional response you get to hearing that music. And that in conjunction with the action on screen is something that is going to either get you excited for the movie or maybe understand it better, understand the context of it and what exactly the mood of it is supposed to be. And those can be important things for you when you are thinking about whether or not you want to go see a movie. So immediately that sound creates a much different presentation of this trailer than you get without the music. And you can accomplish this with pretty much any bit of audio in a trailer. If you take out the dialogue, there's going to be a certain effect. If you take out the sound effects, if you take out the soundtrack, whatever it is, any of those elements, once they're removed, it creates a much different presentation of the material. That's going to change how you perceive it. That's going to change how you would be able to analyze it rhetorically. Without having that music in there, it does feel a little bit senseless. So that brings us back to those three questions. What is the nature of the sound? There's different answers that you might have to this question. It could be background noise. It could be dialogue. It could be background music, as was the case here. And so you would want to identify that. And the reason this is important is because this also impacts the strength of the communication. The example I usually use is a news reporter who is out reporting during a storm, and you have background noise from the actual storm. If the storm is so loud that you can't even hear what the reporter is saying, then she is not effectively communicating her message about that storm to you. So that's not going to be a rhetorically intelligent decision to be in a very loud space trying to report on something when you can't be heard, which answers the question of what effect does the sound have? So in the reporter scenario, the sound has the effect of overshadowing the actual message that that reporter is trying to deliver. With the Batman trailer, the effect that the sound has is it helps to give us context about the mood of the film. We better understand what is meant to be evoked by the action on screen and how we are supposed to feel about it, even if we're not 100% sure what's going on, because every trailer is taken out of context to some extent. We still have a better idea about the mood of the film. And then there's the question of how does the sound combine with other modalities to create a new and enhanced effect? This question builds off of B a little bit. I talked about this a little bit already with Batman, but with that trailer, that sound combines with other modalities to fill in gaps of silence. And by filling that silence with music, it is going to keep the viewer's attention longer. Most people with periods of silence, we are going to tune out of things because there's nothing to actually stimulate us, which is also why music and sound effects are such an important part of a movie trailer or any kind of advertisement. Because once it becomes quiet, we're going to tune out. Having that keeps us invested. That is a rhetorical decision that is made to maintain the retention rate of the audience. But more specifically, when we're talking about how the auditory modality is combining with the other modalities, we might think of that in terms of how the auditory modality combines with the verbal modality. If we have someone who is delivering a speech about an end to oppression in their country, and in the background there is music playing that was written in order to be an anthem against oppression, then those things are playing off of each other in a way that enhances the message. So when you think about how it's enhancing other modalities, auditory enhancing verbal or enhancing visual, you want to think of those types of elements. In the same way that in the Batman trailer, you have drum beats that coincide with where the scene is changing. So that is informing the pacing of that trailer. You can also see that same mixing of auditory and verbal in a lot of songs, where when the instrumental, when the beat gets softer, typically that's going to be combined with a period of verbal silence or a period where the sung lyrics are going to be a lot softer than when the beat ramps back up and gets louder. Once you're able to identify how sound is connecting with the other modalities, all you really have left is to figure out how is this going to be a strength based on what this piece of communication is trying to accomplish. Whether you're looking at it in a general sense or taking a thematic look at this communication. For instance, with the Batman trailer, how does this trailer successfully evoke a somber mood? You could look at the visuals, the color. There's a lot of muted colors, lots of blues, lots of shadows in that trailer, lots of black in there, darkly lit scenes. That can create the somber mood. The song that's playing, Something in the Way, very somber song. There's not a lot of energy in those scenes that we actually watched in this video, so that can contribute to the mood as well. And attached to that, just the visuals of the characters. A man in a black bat suit, that's weird, that's somber. A guy who's wrapping people up in duct tape with this really weird mask on, that's not creating a happy mood at all. The actual narrative action of things being blown up, people being taken hostage, that sense of danger, that creates a somber mood. The music, combined with all of these things, those are all working together to create a somber mood. So in an analysis, that's what you would want to look at, and that's actually what the example for this video is going to be, an analysis on how the elements of the Batman trailer create a somber mood for that film. This is your regular reminder that this is a very rough first draft of a rhetorical analysis, so do not take this to be perfect. This is for demonstration purposes. It could be much better. Since my main focus was talking about audio and how that's intersecting with other modalities, I'm only going to go over this third paragraph where I'm focusing explicitly on this. I wanted to point out here first the use of lyrics in a song that is playing over a trailer or during a movie. So, as "Tarp has sprung a leak" is sung, a crime scene investigator points his flashlight at the ceiling and looks up as if investigating that same leak. That is really important because there is that parallelism, as I go on to explain, between the lyrics and what's actually happening on screen. So we have that visual connection with the auditory from the song. That alone strengthens the communication because it forces you to really focus on this idea of a leak and what that means, which is where I go as I continue my analysis. The notion of what a leak represents. Either something in the world or the world itself is broken. The good is leaking out, which makes the darkness and the rain significantly more effective at establishing the atmosphere. Now, when I talk about the good leaking out, making the darkness and the rain significantly more effective, I'm referring back to the previous paragraphs where in the first paragraph I talk about the use of darkness and color to create this really somber mood in the trailer. In the second body paragraph, I talk about how the rain further augments that. So here, when I am mentioning this idea of a leak that is presented in the song that plays, I am adding a third layer onto this. I'm creating more depth. I'm further exploring how these modalities are all working together in order to say the exact same thing. And the second example I have here is at the end of the trailer, the title card, the Batman, comes on, and we hear really only the second lyric in the entire song, and that's Something in the Way. That's pretty innocuous at face value, but you always want to try to think a little bit deeper and try to be creative in how you're interpreting the information that you're looking at in terms of modalities and rhetoric and the devices that are present. So you can see this in how I interpret it. The Batman is both the title of the film as well as the name of its protagonist. And the use of the song's titular lyric here establishes the film's story as one centered around the struggle to overcome an insurmountable odd. Now, my premise here is that there is a somber mood that is created by this trailer. Overcoming an insurmountable odd is certainly something that is harrowing. It's not a good time, right? So pointing that out helps to forward that idea that the film is effectively creating that somber mood. In any rhetorical analysis, you always want to be looking out for symbolism. You always want to be thinking about what certain colors or angles or certain phrases might represent. Maybe there's a double entendre somewhere. You need to have these connections in mind because that's how you get deeper into analysis. That's how you're able to draw connections between two things that otherwise might seem like they're completely unrelated. And again, this isn't saying that the author necessarily intended those things to be connected, but if you can find a connection there and it makes sense in the context of what you're analyzing, then you should really just shoot for it and make that part of your analysis. Create a new conversation around the communication that you're analyzing. And that's always going to make for a much better rhetorical analysis than taking everything at surface level. But that is all I have for this. Again, if you want to read the whole thing, then just go to the document and you can read it and see what happens there. You can look at the structure. Remember that you should always have a structure for rhetorical analysis that makes sense. With this, since I'm talking about mood, I first talk about how darkness and the actors and their appearance within the film adds to the mood. Then I talk about how the rain and some of the drum beats of the song are also helping to add to the mood before I get to that third body paragraph that talks specifically and explicitly about the background music and what that does to help further the mood of the film. So all of those topics are leading organically into one another, which is precisely what you would want to do for, honestly, any piece of writing. Hopefully this helps just a little bit. The link to the example is going to be in the description like it was for the previous two videos in this series. So go give that a look and read over if you want to understand better what a multimodal analysis might look like. Until next time, stay healthy, drink water, color branch, think about them, tell your friends that you love them, and I'll see you next time.